Hi everyone, I have a flat vellum shaker card featuring some new products from Spellbinder's Fresh Picked collection. The airy blooms on this card are created using fresh picked buttercups, and the sentiment is from Fresh Picked Sentiments. I'm starting off with some dark green cardstock. One piece is my card base measuring 4¼ inches by 11 inches and has only been scored in the middle, not creased yet. The second panel is A2 sized, 4¼ inches by 5½ inches. A2 size panel is lined up to the bottom of the card base and then held in place with some low tack tape. On this lower half with the two pieces of cardstock, I'll center one of the dies from Essential Stylish Ovals and again hold it in place with some low tack tape and run it through the die cutter. This will ensure that my oval windows will line up perfectly, and then I can go ahead and use my bone folder and crease my card base. I've cut two pieces of white vellum that are just a little bit smaller than A2 size. The vellum panels will be adhered with double-sided tape that measures 1/16 of an inch wide. I'll first take that tape around the perimeter of the card base. After the backing paper has been removed from these 4 strips, I'll cross over the corners with some more tape to prevent the shaker material from getting stuck in those crevices. Then I'll go ahead and remove the backing paper from those 4 pieces. Then I can take my first panel of vellum and lay it down over the window. And the taping process is repeated for the second sheet of vellum to lay on top. Because the vellum is translucent, I can see the layer of tape underneath, and I just basically cover it up with a second round of tape. And again, I'll finish up with some cross pieces to prevent the shaker material from going into the corners. I love creating these flat shakers. They're super easy to put together. In fact, they're easier than the traditional shaker. And even though I'm a big fan of dimension, I have to admit I appreciate that it can go through the mail without adding extra postage. All right, just to get my last piece of backing paper off that corner, and then I can add in my shaker material. I'm using flat discs of confetti. Although I'm spreading it out to get it as flat as I can, I am making sure that I'm staying away from that double-sided tape. Now I can go ahead and take my second sheet of vellum, line it up to the first one, and then lay it down flat and give it a good rub. I'll take my second panel, line it up to make sure that I've got it oriented correctly, and then add some liquid adhesive and lay that on top, making sure that it is aligned to the card base. I'm going to cut a gold frame that will sit on the vellum paper inside the oval. Using the die that cut the card base, I'll take the next smallest consecutive die, center it in it, and then tape it together to die cut gold foil cardstock. I don't want to put wet adhesive directly on the vellum, so I'm going to use Tombow glue, apply it to the back of this frame, and then set it aside to dry. So while it's doing that, now I can get my hands on those sweet buttercups. This is a large and gorgeous die set made up of 5 different sprigs of buttercups. I've die cut all of the flowers out of soft lemon cardstock and the centers out of a darker yellow, followed by the detail of the center out of olive cardstock. I did cut a couple of extra flowers. 5 sprigs are cut from a fresh green cardstock. First thing that I'm going to do is to match up all of the flower buds to the correct placement on the sprigs. They've been die cut from the same dark yellow cardstock that was used in the center of the flowers. Then I can go ahead and adhere these on, making sure that these buds line up to the outline of the bud on the sprig. This is such a beautiful die set. The Tombow glue is dry and in its tacky state. I can easily fit the frame inside that die cut opening so that it sits on the vellum. Because it's repositionable, I'm able to lift up that one end so I get a nice, snug, perfect fit. Now to start arranging the buttercups, you'll notice that on the die cuts there are these little circle endpoints. That is where the flowers will go. I'll start off by just adhering that top sprig. The glue has been added just to the area that will sit on the cardstock. Before I go any further, I want to get the sentiment from Fresh Picked Sentiments in place. Avoid putting liquid adhesive on the vellum. I took the cardstock and put it on some double-sided adhesive sheets and then die cut my sentiment. So all I have to do is remove the backing paper, then I can go ahead and put my sticker-like sentiment directly on the vellum window. Of course, getting the backing paper off that little dot for the eye was a little bit of a test of my patience. But I did it. So now I can go ahead and arrange and adhere the rest of the sprigs. Again, I'm only adding the liquid adhesive to the sections that will be adhered directly to the cardstock. The portion of the leafy die cuts that are overhanging the vellum will be stabilized later. I'll just continue on adding in the last final sprigs to create a frame of flowers around this vellum window. These flowers have such a light and airy look, and I think it goes very beautifully with that soft vellum window. For this last sprig, I'll snip off one of the leaves at the bottom, which I'll place elsewhere. Before I go on, I'll first make sure that all of the die cuts that are overlapping the cardstock have a dot of adhesive on them. Now I can go ahead and add in the flowers on all of those stems with the little circle endpoints. I really love that some of the petals have a flat edge, and so I make sure that I orient those edges up against either the outer edge of the cardstock or up against the sentiment. The flowers are being added onto the vellum window. I'm making sure that I add the adhesive not only to that little circle endpoint, but also to the leaves that surround it that it's going to overlap. This will help stabilize all of those sprigs where they're overhanging the vellum. I didn't end up using the largest bloom that comes with this set. I did, however, take one of my extra smaller blooms that I die cut and added it to the top right-hand corner, again making sure that that flat petal edge was right up against the panel's edge. And I have a few bits and pieces overhanging the card base, and so I flipped it over. I'll take my scissors, pressing the blade right up against the edge of the panel and snip them off flush. And there we go, a pretty flat vellum shaker. Spellbinder's Fresh Picked Buttercups is an absolutely gorgeous die set. And I think they look especially pretty sitting on that vellum window. And honestly, who doesn't love a shaker? I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I appreciate your visit.